I know it's happened to most of you. Your vehicle breaks down at the worst possible moment, making you late for work, an important appointment, or even to pick your child up from school. You open the hood and realize that you don't even know how the engine works or what you need to do to fix it. Hello, my name is Bob Downs. I'm going to inform you on the fundamentals of the gasoline engine. I'll be covering the basics of the gasoline engine, the cooling and lubrication systems, and the air and fuel system. We will begin with the basic components of the engine. I know a lot of you are unfamiliar with some of the terms, so I'll relate them to something you're more familiar with. In this case, a bicycle and its rider. Some of the basic components of the engine are the crankshaft. This cycles the pistons up and down and helps run the engine. This is kind of like the front sprocket of the bicycle, using the pedals to move up and down to power the bicycle forward. The next is the camshaft. It's connected to the crankshaft and opens and closes the valves. This is like the rear sprocket on your rear wheel. It is connected to the front sprocket and works in connection with the front sprocket to help make the vehicle or bike move forward. The timing belt connects the crankshaft and the camshaft. This is exactly like the bicycle chain, whereas it connects the front and rear sprockets. The valves, exhaust and intake. This helps the engine to breathe, just like the ones of the bicycle rider. Fuel injection. This puts fuel into the cylinder. This is kind of like the legs of the rider, help push the pedals up and down and fuels the bicycle to go forward. Finally, the spark plug. It ignites the fuel and helps the combustion to work and make the engine run. This is like the brain of the rider that tells all the body parts to work together to move the bicycle forward. Having given you the basic components of the engine, we're going over the two systems that keep the engine running for long periods of time: the cooling system and the lubrication system. The cooling system is vital to engine operation because it keeps the engine from overheating. The cooling system cools the engine using the following components. Engine coolant. This is simply the fluid that runs throughout the engine to keep it cool. The radiator. The coolant goes through the radiator, and the radiator draws the heat from the coolant so it can be recycled to cool off the engine. The water pump. This simply pushes the coolant throughout the system to help cool it. Water jackets. The small alleys throughout the engine that the coolant flows through. Thermostat. It works just like the one in your house. It opens up at a certain temperature and allows the coolant to flow through the engine. And finally, the engine fan. This pulls air through the radiator to help assist cooling the coolant and also improves airflow over the engine, cooling the engine quickly. Next is the lubrication system. It helps keep the engine parts from wearing down due to friction and also helps cool the engine. Many components are similar to the lubrication system. First, you have the engine oil. It serves three basic functions. It reduces friction, cools the engine, and cleans the engine. Next, you have the oil pump. It pumps the oil from the oil pan throughout the engine. Oil cooler works just like the radiator. It removes the heat from the oil as it circulates throughout the engine. Oil galleries, they help the oil move throughout different components of the engine. And finally is the oil filter. As the oil goes through the engine, it takes out composites. The oil filter takes these composites out of the oil, so when it goes back through the engine, it's clean. Now that you know how the engine operates and what is used to keep it running for long periods of time, I will end by going over the air-fuel system, which combines the two most important elements in a gasoline engine. The air and fuel system is the most important part of making an engine run. Without one or the other, the engine will stop immediately. Some of the components of this system are the fuel pump, which takes the fuel and puts it into the combustion system. The fuel filter works just like the oil filter, and it removes the dirt and composites from the fuel before it gets into the engine. The air filter obviously works just like any other filter that I've described and removes the dirt from the air. And the air intake system, which regulates how much air is let in and out of the system. And of course, the most important part is the fuel injection system. There are two types in the gasoline engine: the throttle body injection and the multi-point fuel injection. Both do the same. They meter the air-fuel ratio, which is about 14.7 to 1 air to fuel, and this allows the perfect combustion to happen within the engine. That concludes all the steps and components that make up the fundamentals of gasoline engine operation. Let me briefly go over what I have covered. Today I went over the main functions of the gasoline engine: the operation of the engine, including the basic components, the cooling and lubrication system, and the air and fuel system. I hope you now have the basic understanding how an engine works, so the next time you break down, you can open the hood and have an idea of what's going wrong. Now fixing it, that's another. Take care.